Hello, lovely people. The most glorious time of the year is here. It is officially time to post my non-fiction November TBR.
Doobie 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 doo. Doobie 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 Sophie vlogs.
I feel like surely we all know what non-fiction November is by now. It's a lovely month-long reading initiative that is run by the lovely Olive. This is her last year running it. The aim is to just read more non-fiction than you normally would, and then she does provide 4-word prompts if you want to structure your reading. I've been reading a lot more non-fiction this year. Previously it was about a third of my reading. This year it's been about half, which is great and I am loving it. So I am going to structure my reading around the 4 words, and I'm just kind of going to try and pack in as much non-fiction as possible, so I'm really excited. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to tell you each of the words. I'm going to tell you what books I've got in mind. I would love to hear how you have interpreted them as well, because a few of them, there's always a couple of prompts that I feel like really strong on, and then a couple of prompts which I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So I've tried to assign 2 books for every prompt, and the first prompt is code. So for that I have this is a book that I've literally just picked up. I haven't even hauled it yet. This is Just My Type, a book about fonts by Simon Garfield. Because what is language if not a code? Then I was also thinking specifically, you know, like fonts like Wingdings or whatever it is, where it's like literally is a code. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for ages, and it literally is just a history of different fonts. Also, I think one thing it is doing is not just looking at maybe like the backgrounds to specific fonts, but also when computers started to become a thing, and then typefacing became much more of like a thing that people would just have opinions on, whereas before obviously it was something that was very much left to like printing presses and this kind of thing. So I think that this sounds super intriguing and I'm really excited for it. And then the other book I have for code is On Art and Life by John Ruskin. This is actually excerpts from a longer work. What this is distilling is sort of John Ruskin's approach to art. So I'm going for code as in like a code that you live by, a code that you create by, because I feel, as the quote on the front of this says, you must either make a tool of the creature or a man of him. You cannot make both. So I think he's really laying out his vision for like how artists must live in this way that is, you have to let a person be an artist. You can't turn them into a machine. You have to give them the tools and see what they create, is sort of the sense I'm getting. But I'm excited to find out more, because John Ruskin is a figure that I'm very familiar with because I love the Pre-Raphaelites, but I've never actually read his own writing. I've read lots of non-fiction books about the Pre-Raphaelites and all that, but never anything that is from his own pen. So that's exciting. Next word is path. And again, I've gone 2 slightly different routes for this. The first one is Aristotle's Way by Edith Hall. And I feel like this makes sense already just from the title of the book. This is Professor Edith Hall, and she is effectively laying out Aristotle's beliefs. The heading is called How Ancient Wisdom Can Change Your Life, and it's really breaking it down. Different chapters are organised by theme, so like happiness, potential, decisions, communication, that kind of thing. And she's laying out the path that Aristotle's philosophy like follows, and how you can understand that and then also I think maybe apply it to your own life. Edith Hall is someone who I am very familiar with because she contributes to a lot of podcasts. So she features on Natalie Haynes's podcast like all the time, like every other episode. But also she contributes a lot to In Our Time when there's episodes on classical history and philosophy and all that kind of thing. So she is someone who I really enjoy listening to her opinions on things, but I've never read any of her actual writing, so that's exciting. And the other book for this prompt I've gone for is The Seasons of Trouble, Life Amid the Ruins of Sri Lanka's Civil War by Rohini Mohan. This is a piece of like journalistic non-fiction, and it is looking at the civil war in Sri Lanka that lasted 30 years, but what it's doing is it's tracing, I think it's 3 people in the fallout of the civil war ending, the paths their life took and the path that they took to sort of move on from such a huge moment in history. And it seems like they all had quite different experiences. And the blurb says that it took the author like 5 years to write this book because it very much is based on a lot of journalistic work that she was doing. So I wanted to pick this up because I've been reading some Sri Lankan fiction that has touched on the Civil War, and I realised that I don't really know much about it, so I'm kind of hoping to simultaneously gain a better understanding of it whilst also learn about these actual individuals and what their lives were like. The next prompt was shot, and I've gone very one note for this one. So I've interpreted this one based around photography with the idea of taking the shot and taking photographs. That's because I have Self-Portrait by Man Ray that I've been wanting to read since my partner got it for me in July. Man Ray was a very famous artist. He was best known for his photography, but he did do other types of art as well. He also really orbited a lot of other very famous artists. I really like Man Ray's photography. I own a book of his photography that I have talked about on this channel, I think maybe in my January wrap-up, but I don't know as much about him. He was briefly touched on in Sue Rowe's book In Montparnasse, which is all about the Surrealist movement, but I'd really like to get to know him better. So this is his autobiography in his own words. I do have sort of a companion book that I've been wanting to read around the same time. I might not get to this in November, depends how the rest goes, but I do also want to read Kiki Man Ray, Art, Love and Rivalry in 1920s Paris by Mark Braude, because Kiki Man Ray was one of Man Ray's models. They were involved, but also she was more famous at the time, but has become less famous as time has gone on, and Man Ray has become the one that we really remember. So I don't know if I will get to this for Non-Fiction November, but if not, maybe December I will definitely be picking this up. And I have a couple of like big photography books that I'm also hoping to read. So Brassai is another photographer that I really like that I don't know very well. My partner recently bought this, and then he has another Brassai book on its way, so I definitely want to get to these in November. And then there's also this one, which is really big. It's called Photogenic, from the collection of the Royal Photographic Society. That is also one I want to get to. That is just a lot of it's just a lot of photography. So I've very much gone one note for my interpretation of shot. The final prompt is Join, and this is the one that I had the hardest time finding books for because I want to use books that I already own. I don't want to like buy books for this. What I have gone for is Questions of Travel, William Morris in Iceland by Lavinia Greenlaw. This is joining together and combining William Morris's travel diaries of his journey to Iceland, which I haven't read. I've read excerpts of them, but not the full thing, with Lavinia Greenlaw's poetry. So it's like, it is his diary entries, but then she's created poems that I think are in conversation with them, responding to them, that kind of thing. I think it seems really interesting. Lavinia Greenlaw is a poet who I really liked her interpretation of Troilus and Crusade. One something sorrow, a double sorrow, I think it's called. I really, really liked that. It was like a retelling of it. I didn't really like her own poetry when I read it, so I think I like her responding to other authors more. And then I also had in mind The White Album by Joan Didion, which I have on my Kindle, because this is a series of essays that are sort of about a lot of, at the time when she was doing it, contemporary topics like Charles Manson and all that kind of stuff, and politics and all this sort of thing. When I was at university a long time ago, I did study this a bit when I did a module. We did like a module that was about essays and that kind of thing. And I remember her essay that we did being the one that I enjoyed the most. And I really enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed analysing it. But I've never read the rest of the collection, and I don't even remember what essay that was. But I've gone for it with Joining because I feel like she's sort of joining she's taking lots of really iconic moments of history at that time and like joining them together into this collection. I don't know, I've got a bit loosey-goosey with this one, I think. And then I just wanted to mention one extra book that is super tiny, and I do want to get to it in November. That is Gender by Travis Alabanza. This was done with the Tate when they were redoing part of the Tate, but essentially it's just a teeny tiny little book that looks at certain paintings in the Tate's collection and has a dialogue with them about representation of gender and all that kind of thing. It has a mix of the actual paintings and then these like little sort of interpretation pieces is what I'm going to call them, because I'm not 100% sure. They seem to vary in like form. But yeah, this one's so tiny that I definitely do want to get to it. I read Travis Alabanza's other book, None of the Above, this year, which was a series of essays about non-binary experience, and I found that really valuable to read. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they interpret a bunch of paintings. So yeah, that is everything that I have earmarked in to definitely read for November. I am going to try to just go absolutely ham on non-fiction books, so maybe I'll incorporate a few more, I don't know, but I do love non-fiction November. It is one of the best times of the year. I would love, 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 as I said, to hear about how you, whether or not you're taking part in non-fiction November, how would you have interpreted these words? What sort of routes would you have gone down? What do they make you think of? Anything like that. And if you do have any specific non-fiction recommendations, please always throw them my way. I am exceedingly interested in hearing them. But yes, I hope you're having a lovely day. I will see you next time for something different.